Padme's fate is also sealed in this timeline when Vader goes to Mustafar to eliminate the Separatist leaders. She follows him as in the original timeline, but this version of Vader, fresh from killing Yoda and hardened even further, does not hesitate. When she questions his actions, he force chokes her with cold efficiency, killing her and their unborn children. Luke and Leia Skywalker are never born. The hope they represented, the redemption they eventually brought their father, vanishes with them. Galaxy enters a dark age that makes the original Imperial era look merciful by comparison, without Luke to eventually redeem him, without the crack in his armor that compassion for his son provided. Vader becomes the perfect Sith enforcer. He hunts down every Force-sensitive child born in the Empire, either killing them or taking them to be trained as Inquisitors. He crushes rebellions before they can form. He serves Palpatine without question or hesitation for decades, becoming more machine than man, not just physically but spiritually. The Rebel Alliance, if it forms at all, is weak and scattered. Without Leia's leadership, without Luke's inspiration, without the legend of Jedi returning to challenge the Empire, the Resistance lacks focus and hope. Bail Organa tries to organize opposition, but without the Skywalker twins to rally around, the rebellion never gains the momentum it needs. One by one, rebel cells are discovered and eliminated. Vader personally oversees many of these operations. His efficiency terrifying, decades past Palpatine ages, but does not die, using dark side techniques to extend his life far beyond natural limits. Vader remains his enforcer, unchanged, unquestioning, a living weapon without conscience or mercy. The Empire becomes permanent, entrenched, seemingly eternal. The Jedi become a myth and less than a myth. Children born in this era do not even believe they ever existed. The Force itself seems to fade from the galaxy, or perhaps it simply withdraws, waiting for a time when light might return. But let us explore a different path. What if the duel goes differently? What if Yoda, drawing on 900 years of experience and the clarity that comes from having nothing left to lose, manages to defeat Anakin? Let us rewind to that moment in the council chamber when they are locked in combat, both drawing on reserves of strength that seem infinite, but are not. Yoda recognizes something crucial during the fight. Anakin is powerful, perhaps the most naturally gifted Force user Yoda has ever encountered, but he is unstable. The dark side gives him strength, but also makes him reckless. Every attack is fueled by emotion, which means every attack can be predicted if you understand the emotions driving it, and Yoda, having trained Anakin since he was a boy, understands those emotions better than anyone, except perhaps Obi-Wan. The Grand Master shifts his strategy. Instead of meeting Anakin's power head-on, he begins to evade, to redirect, to use Anakin's momentum against him. It is a technique Yoda has perfected over centuries, the essence of Ataru. Combined with philosophical understanding of the Force, he does not try to overpower Anakin. He waits for Anakin to overextend himself, which, driven by rage and desperation, he inevitably does. The moment comes when Anakin unleashes a devastating overhead strike, channeling all his dark side power into one killing blow. It is the same technique he will one day use against Obi-Wan on the Death Star, but here, now he is younger and more aggressive. Yoda does not block. He sidesteps, letting the crimson blade slam into the floor with enough force to crack the stone. For a fraction of a second, Anakin is off balance, committed to the strike, unable to defend. Yoda's counterattack is precise and merciless. His green blade cuts through Anakin's right arm at the elbow. Anakin screams and stumbles backward, his severed limb falling to the floor, his lightsaber clattering away. The pain is excruciating, both physical and psychological. He has been defeated, the chosen one, the most powerful Jedi of his generation, has been bested by a 900-year-old master who barely reaches his knee. The humiliation compounds the agony. He collapses to his knees, clutching the cauterized stump where his arm used to be, and for a moment the yellow fades from his eyes again. The real Anakin resurfaces, broken and defeated and drowning in guilt. Yoda, approaches slowly, his lightsaber still ignited, but held low, non-threatening. He is breathing. Hard exhausted from the battle, but there is compassion in his ancient eyes. This is the moment where everything could change. Anakin is vulnerable, his dark side confidence shattered, his connection to Palpatine's conditioning weakened by shock and pain. If Yoda can reach him now, if he can pull Anakin back from the brink, the galaxy's future transforms completely. Kneels on the cracked stone floor, his breath coming in ragged gasps, his anger and fear clashing with a sudden wave of clarity. He looks up at Yoda, and for the first time in years, he sees not an enemy, not a threat, but a reflection of what he once could have been. The dark side surges within him, trying to pull him back to rage, to violence, to the path Palpatine whispered in his ear for so long, but the pain and shock have fractured the hold. It no longer commands him. Yoda lowers his lightsaber slightly, allowing Anakin to feel the weight of his choices, to understand the destruction he has brought to himself and the galaxy around him. The council chambers are silent save for their labored breaths and the faint hum of the Force moving through every stone and pillar. Anakin feels every life he has endangered, every betrayal, every lie, every moment he allowed anger to define him, pressing down on his soul. And for the first time, doubt arrives unbidden, and it tastes like clarity. Does not speak at first, because words would only cheapen what he feels. He only stares at Yoda, and in that gaze something begins to shift inside him, a tiny ember of remorse and recognition of what could be salvaged if only he chooses to let go of the darkness that has consumed him for so long. The dark side thrashes like a storm, trying to reclaim him, but the ember resists. Growing brighter with each passing heartbeat, Yoda senses the change not as triumph, but as cautious possibility. He does not press, he waits, he allows Anakin to arrive at the decision himself, because true redemption cannot be forced, only realized. And Anakin wavers, his hands shaking, his chest rising and falling with the tide of power that courses through him. He is a volcano at the edge of eruption, and yet the ember refuses to die. It whispers of a path not defined by hate, not dictated by fear. The galaxy outside seems to hold its breath, because the Force itself is aware of the shift. It senses the fracture in what was inevitable and the potential for a new current, a new flow that has never been seen before. Anakin lowers his head. Slowly, tears mixing with sweat on his face, he feels the emptiness of the dark side and the potential of what remains within him, the chance to rebuild, to protect, to become something more than the weapon Palpatine has molded him into. Yoda approaches closer, his presence grounding the young Jedi, not by command, but by acceptance, by understanding, by the ancient patience of one who has seen centuries come and go. He offers no words, only the steady heartbeat of the Force flowing through him, and Anakin leans into it, feeling the weight of his mistakes, the possibilities for change, and the enormity of the choice that now lies before him. In this moment, the galaxy begins to tilt away from the darkness that had seemed inevitable. The first steps of a future unwritten begin to take shape. The Empire is no longer an unstoppable force, and the seeds of hope take root, not through rebellion, not through legend, but through one broken man realizing he can choose differently, that power can protect rather than destroy, that life can be nurtured rather than extinguished. Anakin rises slowly, not fully healed, not free from the scars of his actions, but present, aware, and willing to face what he has done. He looks at Yoda and nods, a small, almost imperceptible gesture of surrender to the truth, and in that gesture the Force hums differently, a vibration that echoes across stars and planets, a whisper of possibility, a memory of what the galaxy was meant to be. And in that whisper, the first light of a new era begins to glow. The dark side recoils, but does not vanish entirely. It waits, as it always does, testing, tempting. But Anakin now knows he is not powerless. He is not merely a vessel for rage. He is a choice, a decision, a turning point. And the ripple of this choice spreads faster than any fleet, faster than any weapon, faster than any decree from an emperor. For every child born sensitive to the Force feels a faint tug of hope that had never reached them before, and every being who had given in to despair senses a chance for resistance, even if they do not yet understand why, and Yoda stands silently watching, not because he has won, but because the first spark of change has been lit, because the impossible has begun to occur. Because one soul has decided to defy destiny itself, and in that decision the galaxy breathes differently, as if awakening from a nightmare. It has endured for too long, and the current of the Force shifts, moving not as a weapon, not as a tool, but as life itself, aware, patient, eternal, waiting for those willing to listen and act. Anakin breathes heavily, his chest rising and falling with the weight of what he has just survived. He feels the pain in his severed arm, in his body, in his soul, but it is accompanied by clarity, by a strange sense of direction, a path he had never considered before. The dark side whispers, still tempting, promising power, vengeance, control, but for the first time he hears another voice, a quieter voice, a voice that belongs to choice, to responsibility, to what he could become, not what he has been. Steps aside, allowing him the space to feel the Force flowing around them, not pressing, not commanding, simply present and patient. Anakin closes his eyes, feeling the currents wrap around him, gentle and demanding at the same time. He senses the lives he has hurt, the people he has betrayed, the destruction he has enabled, and yet he also senses the potential to repair, to guide, to protect. He sees possibilities he had never allowed himself to imagine, and for the first time he wonders if he can be more than a weapon, if he can be more than a servant to anger. The council chambers are quiet, now only the faint hum of the Force and the distant echoes of the city outside. Anakin opens his eyes and looks at Yoda, his expression raw, broken, and yet unbowed. He does not bow, not out of pride, but because he realizes he must stand for himself. He must face what he has done, and he must choose how he will move forward. And Yoda nods in understanding. He does not speak. He does not offer platitudes. Because the truth must come from within. Anakin rises slowly, his remaining arm shaking with effort, and his hand brushing the floor to steady himself. He feels the weight of his lightsaber lying discarded nearby, but he does not reach for it. He does not need it. He understands that strength is not only in the weapon, it is in the decision, it is in the restraint. It is in the willingness to face consequences, and he senses the galaxy outside, holding its breath, waiting for what he will do next. He moves to the window of the council chamber, looking out at the city below, at the streets, at the people, unaware of how close they came to annihilation. He feels the Force flowing through them, through every life, every choice, every path converging and diverging, and he realizes that he does not have to rule, he does not have to destroy, he only has to act, to protect, to guide, and to change the current even slightly, and that is enough for now. Yoda watches him quietly, sensing the change, not just in Anakin, but in the galaxy, in the Force itself. The currents that had seemed dark and inevitable now ripple with uncertainty, with possibility, with hope not yet fully realized but present and real, and the seeds of a new future are planted, not in legend, not in prophecy, but in the actions of one broken man choosing to rise and face his own darkness. Meanwhile, Palpatine senses a shift in the Force, a disturbance he cannot control. He feels it ripple across systems, across planets, across minds. And it frightens him because he realizes that the galaxy is no longer a tool to bend completely to his will, because the one he had counted on to enforce his vision has chosen differently, and that choice has echoes that cannot be contained. No machine, no manipulation, no deception can fully undo. Anakin takes a deep breath and turns back to Yoda, his face set with determination. He knows the road ahead will be long, dangerous, filled with temptations and failures, but he also knows he will not face it alone, because the Force is present around him, flowing through life, guiding him, showing him paths he could not see. When blinded by anger, he steps forward, ready to act, ready to change the future, and for the first time in years he feels the weight of hope, not as a promise, but as a responsibility. The galaxy itself seems to respond to the shift. Stars glimmer differently, nebulae pulse softly, as if acknowledging the change. Currents of energy previously muted now stir with awareness. and faraway systems sensitive to the Force feel faint ripples, a whisper of new possibilities of lives that could be saved, of rebellions that might flourish, of children born with potential for light and hope that had been denied, now able to grow. Without fear, Yoda steps closer, still, his presence steadying, grounding, calming. He does not take credit. He does not claim the victory, he only allows it to exist, knowing that true change comes from within. And Anakin nods, once small and solemn a gesture of understanding, of commitment, of acceptance. He is not yet redeemed, he is not yet whole, but the first step has been taken, the first path forged. And in that step, the galaxy tilts slowly back toward balance, not perfect, not complete, but alive, breathing, waiting, responding. And as they stand there together in the quiet aftermath of the battle, the Force flows differently around them, aware, patient, eternal, carrying the echoes of choice, courage, and redemption, spreading invisibly across stars and planets, touching lives unseen, teaching hope unspoken. And the galaxy begins to breathe once again, not because war is over, not because evil has vanished, but because one soul has chosen to defy destiny, and in doing so has changed the course of everything. Anakin spends the following days in the council chamber, moving slowly through the ruins of his own choices, feeling the Force wrap around him like a living guide. Not demanding obedience, but offering insight, he examines every thought, every impulse, every shadow of anger and fear that once ruled him, and begins to understand the depth of what it means to choose differently. He meditates not to block emotion, but to feel it, to acknowledge it, to learn from it. Yoda observes, silently offering guidance only when asked, never forcing, never imposing. He teaches Anakin how to listen to the currents of the Force rather than to dominate them, how to perceive consequences before acting, how to temper instinct with understanding. And slowly Anakin begins to grasp that true power is not the ability to destroy, but the ability to protect, to influence, to correct without annihilation, and that each life preserved is a victory, each decision made with clarity a step toward balance. Meanwhile, the galaxy trembles under Palpatine's awareness of the disturbance. He senses the absence of certainty, the faint pulse of rebellion and hope that no longer dies before it can form. He dispatches envoys, fleets, inquisitors, yet their movements are clumsy because the Force itself has shifted, subtly giving those who would resist a slight edge, a whisper of insight, a moment to act before doom arrives. And small cells of opposition begin to move quietly, unseen and effective, guided not by legend or prophecy, but by instinct and the rising influence of the one who has defied destiny. Anakin travels the galaxy, cautiously choosing where to intervene, not as a conqueror, not as a judge, but as a guardian. He prevents massacres, he guides fledgling Force-sensitive children to safety. He quietly undermines Palpatine's schemes, leaving no trace of his presence, yet creating openings for resistance. And slowly word spreads among those who suffer oppression that a new kind of hope exists, not founded in rebellion alone, but in the possibility that one man can choose differently, that one person can alter the current of fate, and that they need not be powerless. Yoda continues to teach him ancient techniques previously reserved for the most disciplined masters, methods of attuning to the Force so deeply that the currents of life themselves can be felt, the balance between creation and destruction understood and navigated. And through this training, Anakin becomes more than chosen one. He becomes a teacher, a protector, a living embodiment of restraint and compassion tempered by strength. And in his presence, even the shadows of the Empire feel a subtle pressure, a warning that the galaxy itself is no longer a puppet of fear. Palpatine grows frustrated and paranoid, sensing his enforcer slipping beyond his control, yet he underestimates the change within Anakin. He believes manipulation will still succeed, coercion will still dominate, but he does not account for the clarity that comes from facing one's own darkness, the humility that comes from surviving defeat, the courage that comes from choosing a path not dictated by hatred. And slowly the cracks in the Empire become apparent. Communication fails, coordination falters, small acts of defiance multiply until the first sparks of organized resistance begin to emerge. Meanwhile, across distant star systems, children born sensitive to the cows Force begin to display abilities previously suppressed by Imperial oversight, their potential awakening. Naturally, because Anakin and Yoda have subtly shifted the currents of the Force around them, providing just enough influence for life to assert itself without direct intervention. They do not know why they feel stronger, why courage rises where fear should dominate, but the Force itself carries the memory of hope into their veins, and it grows quietly, invisibly, unstoppable back. On Coruscant, Anakin begins to train small groups of Force users, quietly teaching them the principles Yoda imparts. Restraint, understanding, empathy, clarity, he emphasizes. Awareness of consequence over raw power, protection over domination, and slowly a new form of Jedi begins to take shape, not rigid dogma, not sectarian loyalty, but a living, flowing order, adaptable and grounded in the real currents of the galaxy. And as this knowledge spreads across hidden enclaves, the legend of the Jedi transforms from myth into practical force, guiding life rather than dictating it. Palpatine attempts to respond, sending agents, spies, enforcers, but each effort is countered not with brute strength, but with foresight, strategy, and subtle manipulation of the Force itself by Anakin and his students. His power over the galaxy erodes invisibly, yet inevitably systems that seemed loyal begin to question orders, fleets that were unquestioned hesitate, and the Emperor feels for the first time the fragile, precarious nature of his dominion, the certainty he relied. Decades pass and the Empire is no longer a monolithic force. It exists in name, only fractured by inefficiency, mistrust, and the quiet resistance that has grown in every corner of the galaxy. Palpatine ages further, his body frail, his mind sharp, yet unable to contain the currents of life and choice that spread beyond his control. He senses his dominion slipping through his fingers, yet he cannot act decisively because the one he relied on to enforce his will no longer serves him as a weapon, but as a guardian. Anakin walks among the galaxy, quietly known by few, yet felt by all. His presence, a subtle force of protection, his students and the hidden guardians he has trained acting as extensions of his will, not as agents of control, but as stewards of life and balance. The galaxy begins to organize itself naturally. Systems cooperate not because of fear or decree, but because of understanding, because those who survive learn the value of choice and responsibility, and the Force itself flows differently, no longer dominated by anger or suppression, but moving with awareness, guiding potential, teaching life, resilience, and hope. Palpatine attempts one last gambit to reclaim control. He gathers fleets, he calls his agents, he manipulates what remains of the Empire, yet each move is anticipated, countered, and dissolved by the network Anakin has nurtured not with violence, but with foresight and subtle influence. Every strike he attempts fractures his power further until he is isolated, powerless, unable to bend the galaxy to his will, and for the first time, he feels fear, a creeping realization that the Force does not belong to him and cannot be enslaved. Anakin confronts Palpatine not as a vengeful warrior, not as a Sith hunter, but as a master of the Force who understands balance and consequence. He does not strike in anger, he does not attempt to dominate. He presents the Emperor with the reality of his failure, the inevitability of his isolation, the futility of his cruelty. And Palpatine realizes that the prophecy he sought to manipulate has already been fulfilled, differently, not through destruction but through restraint, not through domination but through choice, and for the first time in decades he is powerless. The galaxy breathes differently as news spreads of Imperial collapse. Systems that were silent awaken, communities that had cowered begin to organize, life flourishes, rebellion emerges not as a war but as a movement guided by compassion, strategy, and hope. The hidden Jedi of Anakin and Yoda quietly emerge, teaching, guiding, protecting without dogma, without hierarchy. The Force flows freely through life, through learning, through observation, and the galaxy slowly finds equilibrium, not perfect, not static, but alive, vibrant, and responsive. Anakin stands on a cliff, Overlooking a world bathed in the light of twin suns, the Force moving around him, aware, patient, eternal, he reflects on the lives he has touched, the choices. He has made the balance restored not by legend, but by quiet action, by courage and understanding. He senses Yoda nearby, his ancient master, watching approvingly, not as conqueror, not as ruler, but as witness to a path chosen differently, and Anakin knows that true power has never been domination, only the wisdom to act in harmony with life itself. Jedi Order is reborn not as myth, not as dogma, but as living guardians, adaptable, responsive teachers of balance. They grow in secret and in openness. Teaching awareness, choice, compassion, and restraint, the Force flows through them as it did through Anakin and Yoda, guiding children, teaching them to listen to currents, not dominate them, shaping the galaxy for generations to come. The galaxy is not free of darkness, but it no longer fears it because one broken man chose to rise, one master chose to guide one soul, embraced responsibility, and through that choice the currents of the Force shift forever, teaching all who will listen that destiny is never fixed, that hope exists wherever life is protected, and that balance is not a gift to be claimed, but a living truth to be nurtured. Anakin gazes at the horizon, feeling the Force alive around him. The stars whisper possibilities. The planets hum with potential, and he smiles faintly, knowing that the galaxy has survived because of choice, courage, and understanding that the Chosen One has fulfilled his purpose not through destruction, but through life, not through fear, but through hope, and in that realization the Force flows freely, and the story of the galaxy continues eternal, patient, and alive.